Segment 2, Gold and Black Live. Always appreciate the time from this man, Mike Bobinski. He is always gracious with spending a little time with the staff at Gold and Black, and he is, I think, every leadoff show since he came to Purdue in 2016 has had Mike on it. So thanks, Mike, so much for your time. Nothing going on in your world these days.
Lots going on, Alan, but the good news is the seasons are all really obviously in full swing here as of this weekend. All the fall stuff is fully in action, and that's kind of centers you and gets you back to understanding what this is really all about. So it's thankful for that.
Yeah, it is interesting because it is literally a I can only imagine a swirl. Everything's whirling around you and all this, but it really does come down to not only Purdue football. You got volleyball tonight in a big match against Kansas State. All these things. That's kind of what this thing's all about. And you're going to have 55 to 60,000 people in Ross-Ade Stadium tomorrow for that noon kick.
Absolutely, and we're so grateful for our fans. You mentioned volleyball. Volleyball in Holloway is sold out for the entire season, which is awesome. Just incredible support from our folks, and we've got a couple matches in Mackey that are within shouting distance of selling out also. So if people want to come to those, Wisconsin and IU better get to it quickly, because that's rapidly evaporating, which is a really good thing. And then tomorrow, we'll have, I think we're somewhere between 58 and 59,000 right now in the books for tomorrow, which is just spectacular. And if we can finish that off and fill the place completely up, it's just again, we're beyond grateful for the support of our folks.
I mean, and obviously Purdue fans have been in your tenure and even before, they've had great support. But it's for a Labor Day weekend, that number surprised me. The fact that you're within a couple thousand of a sellout in Ross-Ade for a season opener and a noon kick, which it can make things challenging sometimes. But maybe nothing surprises you anymore. But that's quite a tribute to the Purdue fan base, I would say.
Absolutely, and I think probably there's a little bit of a curiosity about our team this year, which has driven some of this, and I get that. We've got so many new faces. We've got year two of Ryan Walters and his staff, and I think we all expect and anticipate a really nice step forward. And again, I've been out at practice a whole lot during the preseason, and I'm very encouraged and very optimistic about the way we're going to play and compete. And obviously, the first game is the first game. It's never perfect, and it's never perfect in the last game. But I am excited to see these guys get out and compete against somebody else. They've been beating each other up now for a month, and time to play somebody else.
Well, and you've watched it when you've been out at practice. This is Ryan Walters and nothing. You and Tiffany Grimes do a lot of work with the coaching staff to Ryan Walters is a young guy, 38 years old, only second year as a head coach at a now Power 4 program. What have you seen in terms of his growth from year one to year two, and still a challenge to be able to survive in this environment of big time college football these days?
Sure. I think, and he alluded to this, I believe, in the press conference. I think he's learned, and you can only learn it by doing it. I know when I got my first athletic director job, I thought I was, 100% prepared and could do it better than anyone could ever imagine. And I learned very quickly that I didn't know what I didn't know at that point. So I think Ryan has really learned where to best apply his time to have the greatest impact, to really function as a head coach in the most effective way possible. He learned, I think, early last year, a couple games in, that missing or not being like in the heat of the action, calling the defensive side of the ball was something that really kept him engaged at a high level. And I think now we're not changing gears this year. We're coming out of the box with a very sound and stable approach, sort of in all those different areas. And I like that. I think the introduction of the communication, the coach to player on-field communication is an interesting dynamic that, we'll all adjust to this year. But I think that's going to be, I would like to think that'll make for a more efficient play calling and all that, both sides of the ball. And so that'll be something to see. But again, I think Ryan has really, really grown into it. He's a very, very intelligent guy, as is I think obvious to everybody. He's very thoughtful and analytical. Has rebuilt the roster with a strategy. It wasn't just sort of grab bag, hey, let's just grab whoever we can get. It was, let's go for positions of real need where we were not as good as we needed to be. And I think they've really shored up some places where we were not at a high level last year. So that part has been really exciting. And I think that will just continue to get better and better as he fine tunes things over the years here.
Leadership is everything in football and in team sports. You know that in your collegiate days as a baseball player for Notre Dame. But you look at Hudson Card and some of the guys leading this team, and this is and even a Dylan Thieneman as a sophomore, guys that show it on the field. But what do you see from the leadership quotient of this group and what Ryan Walters expects out of his team leaders?
So I would say on the offensive side, with Hudson and Gus Hartwig, you've got two really, really strong folks. Gus has been a mainstay since the day he got here, other than that chunk when he got hurt. I mean, he is a big time player who's just, he's not a loud, he's not a very vocal it's not his thing, but he's strong. He expects everybody around him to play to a certain standard. And I think everyone, responds to that very, very positively. Hudson, I think, has really blossomed in a leadership role. A year ago, it's not his natural thing to sort of be in charge, to be that guy. I mean, he's a very capable, very smart young man, understands the game really well. But this year really has a command of the huddle and of the offense and of the relationships that he needs to have with his line, with his receivers. And I just, again, as I've watched him, his decision-making, everything has, to me, progressed to a much higher level, and as a result, I think the players really respond and respect his ability and know that when he's on that field, we're going to have a chance to have really good things happen.
It's one of the interesting things that we talked about this. That I understand where Purdue's, some of the preseason experts picked the Boilermakers this year. Doesn't make a lot of logical sense. Now I know Purdue has to prove it on the field, and you'd be the first to say that, but you have a returning quarterback. You've got a team that's against some of the peer teams that the Boilermakers are picked against. Purdue beat Illinois last year, beat Minnesota last year, beat Indiana last year. I know it doesn't necessarily matter, but does it bring an edge not only to the whole athletic department but to the football staff when expectations, at least by the so-called experts, are low?
I think it absolutely does. And as I read some of those, and it's sort of there's very rarely an original thought given. Once somebody issues a prognostication, everybody sort of falls in line with the same sort of lazy approach, in my opinion. I'm having watched this for a long time. None of those folks had actually been here and seen or really dug deep into the flip and the changes to our roster and our personnel. I mean, they looked at, well, Nick Scarton left, and the four best, the four top receivers. Again, Nick is obviously a great player, and our receivers were really, they worked hard, but were they All-American caliber? No, they let's be honest, they weren't. And so, it wasn't the loss that maybe on paper it appeared to be. So I would tell you that I think that was a lot overblown, and a lot of not very deep, in-depth work was done analyzing where we are going forward. That has, I think, certainly hit home with our locker room and the whole building over there. Not that we need anything more to get us ready to compete, but it's always nice to say, hey, you know what, we didn't receive a lot of respect. People don't really believe much in who we are, and now we have a chance 12 times during the regular season to go out and prove who we are. And I think that's we're not going to talk about it. We'd rather just go do it. And I think that's the approach. And I like that. There's a very sort of a resolve about this group that I really like, where they believe in each other. They believe in what they're capable of. And I know they're anxious to get out there and show it.
All right, Indiana State coming in, FCS opponent. Purdue's, it's been talked about. You've got North Carolina, Wake Forest on the schedule upcoming, at least scheduled at this point, Notre Dame for the next few years. What's your philosophy, and what, as you talk to Ryan Walters, what do you want to get done from a future schedule standpoint? Do you want three FCS opponents? You probably can't do that, I understand, but you want to make that schedule a little more friendly, or especially in the fact that you're staring at a Big Ten conference, which is all encompassing. How do you view that moving forward?
Yeah, I think, Alan, as we think about it going forward, we want to be as balanced as we can be. You don't want to, last year was a heavy lift early on. This year, you've got, Indiana State is a nice lead into the year, and Big Ten rules, you're only allowed to play one FCS. That's the scheduling guideline, unless there are some, incredibly extenuating circumstances where you're up against it and couldn't find anybody but another one. But typically one FCS per year. We'd like to balance that out and have over time work to where we maybe have a group of 5, an FCS, and then a Power 4 team as sort of the lead into our year. It'll take some time. We're not going to bail out on a bunch of contracts unless there's a mutual interest to walk away from future games or series. And that, I think, is something that you never know. As the world shifts, as conference alignment is different today than it was, and who knows if 9 conference games is the end all be all for the Big Ten. Who knows if we, as we get closer and closer in alignment with the SEC from a partnership perspective, maybe we end up with a scheduling arrangement where everybody, Big Ten and SEC, play each other every year in a game, and so there's lots of things that could happen that might affect our future schedules. But in terms of what we would like to do is strike a balance. You don't want to. I don't think any coach. I know our coach, Coach Walters, as with Jeff Brom, nobody thinks 3 layups is a great idea. I mean, that's, when you're getting ready to play in the Big Ten, you've got to be tested. You've got to know what it looks like to play against real people. That being said, you want to come out of it in a reasonably confident and healthy way to the best of your ability. And so having some more balance, I think, is the plan going forward.
Yeah, when you took this gig, I think it was August 9th, 2016, you did not predict Oregon, UCLA, USC, Washington, and the league. You're a smart guy. That was a hard one to predict. But that really has changed the dynamic. Do you see this, the future of college sports? Conference realignment always gets talked about.
Yeah.
You think we're slowed down now that you have 18, or is it just you just never know, and you have to be nimble not only in your seat but from a Big Ten commissioner, Tony Petitti's situation on down the line? Are we going to ever get a quiet period, or is this ever moving here in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think just out of necessity and with all the other elements that are in play right now, that it'll quiet for a period of time. From the Big Ten perspective, the only way it would ever make sense for us to be something other than 18 teams would be if someone can come in that adds clear and sort of unquestioned value to the table. Having just more teams in and around our conference makes no sense unless they actually are value adds, because every new player at the table is another mouth that has to be fed, and if you're splitting the same pie by just more slices, doesn't make any sense to anybody. So it would have to be somebody that brings a plus value, and there are very few of those that exist in the landscape right now. Period. I mean, there just aren't. So I think there's not a lot of obvious things that would happen from a Big Ten perspective going forward.
All right, as fans and observers view college sports, we've all heard of the House decision and what has transpired there. But if you're looking at it from a calendar standpoint, what's next to watch for the fans to understand what might be next with respect to that? There's still some work to do from a legal perspective, as I understand it. But give us you can't do this on an elevator speech, but maybe an elevator speech to the highest level of Willis Tower in Chicago. But give us what that is.
Well, from a very, and I'm going to stay out of trying to play make-believe lawyer here, but but my understanding is that the settlement terms have been put in front of the judge, Judge Wilkin out in the Ninth Circuit in California. I believe September 5th, which is next Thursday, is the date that has been set where we anticipate that she will issue her preliminary ruling on the terms of the settlement. We'd like to think that she will approve the terms as presented, both the plaintiff's attorneys and the Power 5 conferences, because all 5 were defendants along with the NCAA. We've all agreed on the basic terms, and we'd like to think that will be compelling to the judge, that everybody came to that resolution sort of willingly and knowingly. Once that happens, there is an official period for challenge or objections to be filed with the court on the terms, and we've all read, those of us that read the sporting press here, there are people that are posturing about this isn't right, that's not right, it could be done this way or that way. I mean, of course, it's a free country, and people are allowed to express their opinions. There's some of those objections I think are, in my opinion, short-sighted and don't really take in the entire picture. But that's for the judge ultimately to decide. If in fact that those challenges are deemed to be not worthy, hopefully in about 6 months after her preliminary ruling, the settlement will be fully certified and then be able to be implemented for the 25-26 year. So this current year we're operating business as usual, or business as it has been for these last couple of years, which is really anything but usual. But it's the same as it has been these last couple of years. But in 25-26, we'll enter into a new set of sort of a new economic model, a new scholarship/roster model. So there'll be lots of change that we are preparing for in anticipation that the settlement will basically stay together in large part as it's written right now. So we're working hard, as all of our colleagues around the Big Ten are, to make sure that we're prepared for what happens in 25-26.
Donors have played such a huge role, not only at Purdue, but everywhere, in terms of making, not only from a facility standpoint, but now in the world of NIL, player compensation, et cetera. What do you say to donors moving forward? I mean, you still have big dreams of maybe other projects at Ross-Ade Stadium. How do you continue to massage that situation and keep donors motivated to support this program when there's a lot of different ways that a donor can support it?
Sure. Donor support will be not less important, but maybe even more important going forward. And I'd like to think that we can provide a little more clarity. I think we as an industry have offered a pretty confusing environment these last couple of years with, do I support this initiative, which is sort of external to the university, or do I support internal causes? I'd like to think that once we get the settlement fully in place, we'll be able to be a lot more direct and upfront with our donors as to where they should or where they might direct their support. But it is going to be really important. To your point, Alan, we're going to certainly have things we're going to want to continue to do in and around our facilities. Ross-Ade being a prime example. That it's a stadium that we love. I love it. I love where it is. But there are improvements that will need to be made and updates that will need to be made. It's 100 years old in some places and 50 years old in other places, but it's going to need to continue to move forward in order for us to be competitive in this new world. So that will continue to happen. And then just pure operating support as we enter what appears to be a new situation where a significant chunk of our operating revenue will be siphoned off the top. We're going to be challenged to continue to operate this program at a really high level. And I think we have an opportunity, if we can continue to generate the support that we've been so fortunate to have from our donors over the last couple of years. If we can continue down that path and sort of that upward trajectory, I think the new environment really plays well for Purdue. I think we're really incredibly well positioned. But some of it does rely on our donors continuing to be with us, and I have every confidence that they will.
Yeah. Last question. The $22 million, and of course the university will be in partner with some of that, if not most of it. How has that worked? You've got a very supportive. They always talk about alignment. The board of trustees, the athletic director, the coaching staff. Purdue's been pretty fortunate over the last few years to have very good alignment. But how has that worked for you as you look ahead and try to get that funding the way you need it to move forward at a top level?
Sure. And we are fortunate here at Purdue to have President Chang, our board, even our university financial, Chris Rule, our CFO, and have been wonderful in conversation with us about how we might work to allow ourselves the opportunity to compete at the very highest level here in this new environment. It will require some rethinking of how our relationship is with the university, but it will still be incumbent upon us to continue to drive revenue, control expenses, do all the things that we've tried to do at a high level in recent years, and I think have been reasonably successful. And that is what honestly, I believe has allowed us to be positioned to be successful because we've been really pretty smart and go way back before me and efficient in how we manage resources and push revenues. It gave the university confidence, I believe, in to partner with us going forward, knowing that we're going to continue to do our part in being as responsible as we can, and we will step forward and help in ways that allow us to compete at the full revenue share cap and in a way that allows us to be right there with everybody in the Big Ten and beyond.
All right. Our time is up. You've got a football game to get to, volleyball tonight, big dinner as well from the John Purdue Club. All these things go on in your world. Thanks so much for your time. And we all look forward to what we'll see tomorrow. New uniforms tomorrow and all those kind of things are going to be fun. That's the fun. That's the ice cream on the cake, so to speak, when you get to college football. Mike, have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for your time. And we always appreciate that so much here on Gold and Black Live.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Chad Q. Brown will join us, somebody that Mike Bobinski knows well. He'll join us in segment 3. We'll break down a little bit of profile behavior and its role with Purdue student athletes as well. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 2 minutes on Gold and Black Live.